so much to talk about with this team, and part of our discussion was how much they could potentially miss Brian Daboll as the offensive coordinator, was the coach of the year after taking over for the Giants last year in season number 1. The drop-off there from him to Ken Dorsey, working with Josh Allen. Is there anything to that at all? Did Daboll mean that much to Allen and the team, or nothing really to see here?
Oh, for sure. I mean, not only is there all this data that shows that first-year play callers struggle in the NFL, but Daboll had kind of picked his pieces on that offense over the course of time, guys that he leaned on in the offense that thrived under his system. And they weren't a consistent running team under him, but he had so many different like tricks and gadgets that he pulled out that I just don't know if this version of the Bills offense last year did all of that. And I think it's one of the reasons why Isaiah McKenzie didn't really flourish with Ken Dorsey. And then by the end of the season, Stefon Diggs was really frustrated with the fact that I don't know if there was a plan B, C, D after things didn't go so well. Because you lean on the fact that you have Josh Allen, and I think Ken Dorsey was smart to do that. But over time, it almost felt like they were just trying to be too much down the field. There wasn't enough attention paid in that short and intermediate area. And that's why I think they went out and drafted Dalton Kincaid in the first round, a guy that can operate in that space and add that Cole Beasley dimension, maybe in a different package, back to this offense, which was so important while Daboll was here.
What's your level of concern with the Diggs drama?
Enough to where I think it's a story.
Okay.
I don't think that we're going to get to training camp and into the season and have it be this big, looming, large, drama-filled situation. But there's a problem there. And I know that Josh Allen tried to, dump some water on it here in recent weeks, but it was a big enough problem that his coach came out and said that he was very concerned about where things were. And this was, before that, we had asked Brandon Beane, we had asked Sean McDermott for months, dating back to the scouting combine. What's going on with Diggs? I mean, he went on this Super Bowl media tour. He was on the sidelines during the Bengals game screaming at Josh, is everything good? And they were like, it's all good. Everything is okay. And then lo and behold, we get a couple months later and it's not okay. And so I think listen, he pours a lot of his time, his energy, his focus, his leadership into being an elite wide receiver, and they haven't gotten it done. And if you think about it too, in 2020, their season ended in the AFC title game. They haven't been able to get back in the 2 years since, and they're supposed to be taking steps, getting better. So I think that's probably the biggest part of this is like, what are you doing as an organization to take that next step? And Josh Allen came out and said, organizationally, we have to communicate better. And they just didn't do a good enough job of that this offseason. They said now that it's all clear and we'll see what things look like in training camp, but something I'm definitely monitoring.
Why do you love the over 10.5 wins?
Because Sean McDermott, you could say anything you want about him, especially in the playoffs, and some of the criticism is warranted. I've applied some of it. 13 seconds is going to be a stain on his resume for years. But in the regular season, he finds a way, this 1 week at a time mentality that he pushes on his team, they find a way to win. I mean, 11 wins, 12 wins, 13 wins. The last 3 seasons, they've gone over that 11-win mark, and I know it's a much tougher division, and I know it's a much tougher conference, but he is so good at compartmentalizing things. And I also think this roster is a lot better. I mean, we just did a podcast episode where I linked up with a couple, radio hosts to go over and do a snake draft of the AFC East. And we did 64 players, and we wanted to see, all right, how many players from each AFC East team would end up getting drafted in this draft. And the Bills ended up with the most, 19 players compared to 17 for the Dolphins and 12 each, I believe, for the Jets and the Patriots.
Okay. It's Follow the Money here on VSiN, the Sports Betting Network. Our guest is Matt Parino, who covers the Buffalo Bills for Syracuse.com. So it sounds to me then like you're in line with their power rating, and their power rating when it comes to betting has been astronomical over the last couple of years. I asked the question like last hour, how many teams would actually go to Kansas City and be favored to win the game? Like that's it. It's the Bills. That's the list over the last couple of years. And not only were they like power rated to win that game, they were favored. They also actually won and beat KC, and they matched up pretty well against that team. However, they are the second shortest team on the odds board to win the AFC. That I disagree with. I think the Bengals are actually better than the Bills, and I think the Bengals match up really well with Buffalo. Where do you fall in line with that?
Well, I think it's a league of adjustments, right? So last year in 4.5 quarters, the Bengals absolutely dominated the Bills, right? Like we saw that. I think that you're going to see a completely different approach to defending that team. Sean McDermott takes over the defense. They're likely going to be a lot more aggressive. I think they got a little bit more punch as a pass rushing unit. And what was the thing that derailed Joe Burrow last season? The pass rush.
Mhm.
The Chiefs got to him 5 times in the AFC title game. The Bills couldn't even sniff him
Yep. Yep.
in that divisional round. They go out and they add Leonard Floyd, a guy who is getting older, but I think in the right situation, which is where he's lining up here, he is going to add a dimension that allows them to, pair him with Greg Rousseau early in the season, hope that Von Miller gets back for later in that push and be a little bit closer to the guy that he was towards the ends of the season. Now all of a sudden, they don't have to rely on some of these draft picks on the edge over the last couple of years that just haven't panned out. And now you hope Boogie Basham, AJ Epinesa, one of those guys takes a step to be part of the rotation. Huge year for Ed Oliver. They just paid him. He's got to be that guy in the middle. And don't forget Daquan Jones, who was one of their pound for pound best players last year. If we're talking about production versus value, what they paid him, he was really good. He didn't play against the Bengals last year. He had a calf in.
Mm-hmm. Overall, what do you make of the two other teams in that division? And I say that because the Patriots are picked to finish fourth here, and that's not a shot at them because their defense, I think, is going to be really good again this year. But the two teams expected to be better, the Dolphins and the Jets. Like, are you buying into the Dolphins, or do you have too many questions about Tua? And where are you at with this, 40-year-old Aaron Rodgers now being the quarterback of the Jets?
I'm all bought in on the Dolphins. They're a legit team. They have weapons on both sides of the ball. I think one of the most underrated additions of the off seasons in the NFL is Vic Fangio. Because if they can all of a sudden flip things and become even a top 15 defense with the way that they're able to score, they're going to be a problem in this league. But there's little things baked in. I mean, to every type of situation. And it's like you mentioned it, Tua, can he stay healthy? Um, what's going to happen if Tyreek Hill, who's been super fast and super healthy over the last couple of years, struggles to maintain both of those things? Guys don't get faster as they get older. And I know Tyreek Hill's still winning, race competitions and everything like that, but that's something I'm kind of always looking out for. There's a reason the Kansas City Chiefs were willing to move on from that situation. And so I'm really all eyes on Tyreek Hill, but that defense has a chance to be oh so good. I'm a big Jalen Phillips believer. In New York, I don't know. I think it's going to take some time for that offense to figure things out. They're really great on defense. And I think New England's going to be the pest of the division. The Bills are really good, though, to my earlier point in the regular season. I think that there is a chip on their shoulder.
Mhm.
The national narrative is this isn't the Bills division anymore. And that's going to be plastered in Sean McDermott's locker room all year long. Nobody believes in us. Everything is, the sky is falling. And I think week in and week out, you're going to see them, kind of have to answer that bell. And they've done a good job of that. Guys, listen, they won 8 games in a row last year, despite losing Von Miller at Thanksgiving, the whole DeMar Hamlin situation. I mean, they probably should have lost against Miami in the first round. They found a way to eke by in that one. They're a really well coached team. They have a lot of talent. I think they've re-upped things a little bit here in year, what is it, 4 now with Diggs in Buffalo.
Yep, yep. Hey, Matt, we have about 90 seconds left here. Does Hamlin play this year? Is he going to get on the field at least in one game?
I don't know. I think if you would have asked me this before minicamp, I would have said I'm really hesitant to go all in on that kind of take. But everything I've seen from him over the course of the spring and seeing him out practicing, I know they're not in pads, and I know nobody's allowed to hit, but he was out there running around like had a couple interceptions, was hitting a couple guys, even had a little injury, lower body injury where he came off and came back on.
Mm.
I think we're on the path to that, guys. Like I if we get to training camp and he's out there day one when they put the pads on and participating in team drills, I won't be surprised at this point. But I still just wonder, like when we get to the preseason games, if there's going to be any type of mental hurdles to get over. But I also think the guy, the person, the mental strength of him, the way that off the field, like all the things that are on his plate, he's basically toured the world this offseason and president, he's a really, really special individual. So I'm never going to say never with this guy.
Okay, I think that's totally fair. You can follow Matt on Twitter. He's at Matt Parino and does a great job for Syracuse.com covering the Buffalo Bills. Thanks so much today for the insight today, Matt. We appreciate that.
Thanks for having me.
Visit VSiN.com to get current odds, listen for free, find showtimes, and download VSiN sports betting podcasts.